What is up, Seven Figure Culture fam? I have Grant Eilertson here today. What's up, Grant? How you doing?
What's going on, brother? It's great to be here.
So we'll call him Coach Grant because I had to type out Eilertson literally here for me my pronunciation, but that doesn't really matter. And you don't give a shit what our names are. You just want to know how we can help you make money, and we're going to do that today because Grant has sold more than $2 million in coaching services over the past 12 months, and I was just sharing with him how, for selfish reasons, I'm excited to do this interview because we are right on the cuff of that $1 million run rate and excited to learn how to kind of leverage some of what Grant has here. So before I do anything else and we dive in, Grant, I want to turn it over to you. But first, I actually want to share this. My first interaction with Grant was at Tribe of Buyers Live in San Diego, I think not a year ago, a little less than a year ago. So I think October 2019.
Yeah.
And you guys really just blew it out of the park, just crushed it, had an amazing weekend, really inspired us to do POD Live. So it was a real pleasure getting to know you. You guys obviously inspired us, so I appreciate that because we had a fantastic time with our event, and we have a lot of what we learned on how to do that the right way, how to sell at an event, how to do that ethically, make high ticket offers. We learned a lot of that from you guys. So super excited to have you right from the source. I'm going to turn it over to you though. Let me know a little about your background, share that with us, and then we are going to go right into it. And I'm going to say what's up to everyone here as they're joining us.
Sounds good, brother. Yeah, that was a super fun event. It was actually my biggest stage with 200 people in the room. And fun fact, it was all completely filled organically. In fact, I did about 70% of the ticket sales myself just via Messenger and on calls. So
I
no
have the
paid
proof in my
ads.
messenger inbox. I have the message before we got on this call today was from that event, you setting up individual calls with all the attendees. And we were like, that's a good idea. So we took that.
Oh man, that was a grind, but that ended up panning out so well with, I mean, upgrades to VIPs from general attendees, but then also having your sales rep develop relationships on the front end of a live event is a huge little ninja hack if you want to go ahead and write that down, um, for making sales really easy on the back end, because people came and I was the first person they hugged in a lot of the cases. So if that doesn't speak volumes to like how simple it can be to build rapport on the front end, I don't know what else does. And I say simple, not easy, because yeah, it's a grind, but it's worth it.
I was muted. To your credit, also, I have a friend here who lives in Michigan. He owns a marketing agency, Aaron Bedore. I'm not sure if that name rings a
Oh, I
bell.
love him. Yeah.
So I was funnel hacking you guys, and I got together with him, and I was like, so hey, why did you end up buying at the event? Like, explain that thought process. And he really said, Grant and Andrew, all of them made me feel like they were there for me when I showed up, even before the event. So that was really cool, man. Something we took to heart and did as well, and I made for sure an impact on what we were able to do at ours. But I know a lot of the people here watching this probably aren't in a place where they're going to be doing their own events right now. Totally fine. I'm very excited to learn from Grant how we can sell organically, right? And I'll start not selfishly, but I'll just kick it over to you in terms of like the people who I know are in this group. A lot of them are building agencies, some coaching businesses for sure. But where does your mind go? Because I love prospecting. Like, prospecting is my shit. So I really love the sales angle. If you needed to go get the opportunities first, what would you typically be doing? And let's start there, and then we can maybe talk about the sales strategies once you actually have the opportunities.
Okay, great question. So, I mean, just to pre-frame this real quick and make sure you know this is not some esoteric bullshit I'm pulling out of nowhere. I've worked with 3 different companies now on the inside to get them from low 6 figures to well over $1 million a year. And I've also had the opportunity to now coach thousands of different people through various programs. So this is just what I've been able to distill from great mentors, as well as doing it myself. From a prospecting standpoint, I'm not a paid ads guy. I'm not an Instagram, YouTube influencer, not great on LinkedIn, but what I am good at doing is building relationships and moving people with organic content to calls. I primarily use Facebook. So if you've heard something from, an Instagram guru, go with them if that's your platform of choice. But since we're on Facebook, chances are you're using it in some way, shape, or form. So three different ways of generating leads. We've got hunting, fishing, and farming. All right. And so hunting is kind of like virtual door knocking, if you want to use that analogy, where people will essentially seek out those who look like their potential clients, either with keywords or going into various groups and just searching out profiles. And then they're essentially knocking and saying, hey, this is what I do. Is there any chance I could help you? Now, personally, I hate hunting. It's not my jam. I would much prefer to do one of the two other options, which are fishing and farming. So fishing is essentially like, I'm going to go to a pond that I know already has 20-inch bass in the pond. And I'm going to bring a little bucket of worms. I'm going to toss them in. And then I'm going to reel back some fish because I know there are great fish in that pond. This is like going into a Facebook group, for example, that's chocked full of your ideal clients. And instead of manually seeking out each individual person, I'm just throwing a great piece of bait in there, like a personal story, for example, that's framed as a covert testimonial, or an undercover authority post. And
Right.
this is a bit more complex than we have the time to get into here.
Yeah.
However,
Don't go put links in random groups because you will be kicked out very quickly.
yes, you will. It's an
There's
art
nuance
form.
here.
But that said, I mean, you could pull back 20, 30, 40, 100 people to your profile or your group from a well executed post in someone else's ecosystem.
Yeah. Let me give you a really good strategy. I think you'll even appreciate this. I remember Brian Harris, the Video Fruit guy, did a lot of different content, but one of his strategies was called the poster boy strategy. And I always admired Andrew did this really well, because he was able to go in other groups and he was putting content in there. It was his story, but in praise of the leadership of that group or the community. So he was calling out and saying thank you to the leaders, the group itself. Now that is social proof and testimonials for the group. They want that. They want to see that and leave that there. And other people now come see it and see that authority, right? Hey, this person accomplished this. And now you are able to put your story, value, and content in a group by simply just acknowledging or thanking the person or the community that you're a part of, because it becomes it's called the poster boy strategy. And I love that one.
I haven't actually seen it named, but this is exactly what I would do. If for example, I was looking in the ClickFunnels group, I would say, thank you so much, Russell Brunson, for putting together this awesome community. Without your software, ClickFunnels, I never would have been able to generate over $1 million in the past year in my business. And I wouldn't have been able to help the hundreds of clients that I work with do the same. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. If you're struggling right now, just stay the course, believe in yourself, and keep using this community. I didn't have a specific call to action for myself, but oh man, is that a great authority play?
Yeah, and people want to see that and they come look at you. And then there's a whole, we won't even get into the idea of a profile funnel necessarily on this call. I really want to get into the sales aspect of it. But designing and positioning yourself in a way where people actually see you as the authority and they want to work with you, right?
100%.
Cool. So what is up, Nicole and Karen and Raul and John? Appreciate you guys being here. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button. You know the game. You know how this works. If you have any questions around selling or sales, please make sure you ask. We're here to support. And this is a great time to get advice and free mentorship. Do it. What are you doing? If you're just going to waste time mindlessly looking at this, ask questions, be involved. Cool, man. So what's the next piece? There was fishing, hunting, and then what's the third one?
Then we got farming. So this is where, if done consistently and done well, you're going to end up eating the most. Because if you can farm in your own backyard, you'll never be without food. And so this is essentially cultivating and nurturing the list that you already have on your personal profile or in a group. If you're continually nurturing relationships at scale done effectively with your copywriting, then you can be touching 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 people at a time that are already in your audience, moving them all the way from unaware to I'm buying. And so those are where I would spend the majority of my time. Because I've done the virtual door knocking thing back when I ran a fitness business a few years ago, and it is exhausting and it puts you in a submissive state versus an authoritative state. Because if someone's reaching out to you, the person reaching out is the one that's technically of a lower perceived value than that which is getting reached out to.
Man. This is so good. And the idea of this being this being in a submissive state. So anyways, we have this strategy called, it's basically, it's not called, we don't have a name for it. We really need to name it. But it's pretty straightforward of taking people off of LinkedIn and bringing them into a Facebook group. So where you're kind of turning outbound inbound, because you went to them, but then eventually they're coming to you, to your group, and they see you as the authority. And now you have leverage, and now you're using content to nurture them in a pond if they're not going and converting right away, and a place where you can have direct one-on-one conversations via Messenger. Frankly, one of the most powerful strategies right now. We have a couple of people using it really successfully, and then a literal couple who is struggling to get prospecting done the right way, or not the right way, but the way we had suggested or recommended in a unique space, the RV space. Started a Facebook group. Literally today had a message from them. One was like, please don't message me. Now it was like, please add me to the group. The same exact guy flipped in a week. He's like, stop talking to me. Wait, I want to be a part of the community. Don't leave me out. So it's crazy how you turn that. You can turn that, right? So I love what you're saying in terms of lead generation. Eventually you want to have your own pond, right? You want to be able to farm your own leads. So that's this first piece around prospecting. Is there anything else you wanted to share around kind of creating that organic content, getting the right people to see it? What are your thoughts there? And then we can kind of move into how we convert them to a call.
I think that we can probably move forward through that, because while I've had to do it just because I've had to do it, it's not my zone of genius. I can get it done, but sales is where I love to live.
Cool. Love it, man. Let's move on to it then. So creating content organically, attracting people to you. Love it. We have our own strategies. It's prospecting on demand, guys. You know, we have prospecting strategies, so utilize those. Let's talk about now actually getting them onto a call. I think this is a really interesting piece a lot of coaches don't touch on. We have a whole module on appointment setting specifically, because taking someone from, hey, I raised my hand metaphorically on the internet, to an actual phone call can be a delicate process. You don't want to play 21 questions. You don't want to. So I'm just curious, what's your take on now appointment setting? We have interest, we have leads. How do we get them on a phone call consistently?
Well, I mean, you guys, I'm sure, teach great strategies, and there's 1.5 million awesome strategies for getting it done. I tend to take more of a philosophical approach. And I operate with frameworks because I can't keep everything in my head. So I need simple frameworks to operate within. Okay. So little example, like, have you ever watched a Netflix series where you just find yourself having to hit play on the next episode, even when it's way past your bedtime? You decided already halfway through the episode you were done, but then all of a sudden you're committing to another hour.
Yeah, it's Dexter for me and my fiance lately. Like, why are there so many cliffhangers?
Bingo. So for me, it's been Homeland recently. That's a fantastic show.
That is.
So this is essentially the concept of open loops, or if you want to take it a step further, hypnotic storytelling.
Okay.
And this is the same framework that I apply when I'm creating content, as well as when I'm in Messenger, as well as when I'm on calls, and even, in fact, when I'm on coaching calls. So the whole point of this is when somebody, for example, raises their hand on a post saying, yes, I'm in. For example, you ask them, if you want this, comment #term below.
Yeah. So many people don't take action, even though they comment on that. So we'll get to that later, but that's a sticking point for sure.
Yeah. So once they've commented, it's because they have this perceived dopamine response that they can achieve. Right? Our brains fire off dopamine when we're even window shopping, because we have this perceived, like, yes, I could get that. So naturally, that's what triggered them to actually leave a comment. So what do we need to do in order to get them to a next step? There always needs to be some sort of dopamine. There needs to be something for them to gain in the next step. And so this is where a lot of people screw up, is that they don't actually close a smaller loop. They just leave it completely open. Like, they'll just be like, they commented for a resource, for example. You go into Messenger, like, hey, you still want the resource? Yeah, cool. Well, can I ask you a few questions? You go through it, and then you try and offer them a call without ever even discussing the resource itself. And so you leave that open loop, and there's a dissatisfaction. And a lot of times people will then just go to book a call just so that you'll send them the resource, ghost on the call. Not effective. So your whole job when you're taking someone through stages of progressive compliance is to close a smaller loop while simultaneously opening a bigger loop. So let's just say you reached out because you were talking about, like, hey man, I just need some more leads. It looks like you're pretty good at it. And you're like, cool. Can I ask you a few questions to figure out, what's really going on? You determine that their lead problem is a result of, like, in their mind, I'm just not posting enough content. But you look at their content and you're like, well, this actually sucks. It's not inspiring or motivating at all. And so what I might actually do is now close a smaller loop on what they believe and say, well, yeah, in fact, when you're not posting enough, it's going to decrease your ability to be omnipresent, which means less people see your stuff at all. So you could start posting every day now and get much more eyeballs on your stuff. Make sense? Yeah, it does. So we basically closed a smaller loop, but simultaneously we need to open a bigger loop, where I would say, now, to be clear, it's not just a matter of frequency, it's also a matter of quality. And I've noticed that a lot of your posts, albeit them well written, aren't super compelling for someone to reach out. And I'd be happy to offer some guidance around how you could potentially post half the content that you are and get twice the results, but it's a bit too much to get into here in Messenger. You open for a quick call so I can lay it out for you? So I'm telling them, like, yep, here's the solution to that little problem, but if that's solved, you have this much bigger problem. I'd be happy to share with you a solution, but it's a bit too much to get into here. Are you open to the next stage of compliance, where we then get the call booked?
Beautiful, man. I love this. And we use some similar tactics as well, for sure. Something, even the idea of a mini application where you sort of qualify them, like you said, in Messenger by asking a few qualifiers that get them to open up, but also don't waste your time by getting onto a phone call with someone who's unqualified. And I think a big thing people miss, and you said it there, and it's easy to kind of skip over and miss, but coming from and selling from a place of leadership where you need to tell them what they're doing wrong, not just be a mindless yes man or yes woman who nods their head and say, oh, okay, so you've been relying on referrals for 5 years. That's awesome. Can I show you how to do SEO? It's like, no, you need to speak from a place of leadership and acknowledge that they're doing something wrong. I love what you said, close a loop, help them with something smaller, and then open up a bigger loop. I love that angle. It's not something we necessarily do or teach, but it makes perfect sense. I love that. So we have them interest. They say yes, they want to get onto a phone call. Now, here's a really interesting debate you can settle. I'm curious on your take. This is kind of a yes or no answer, I guess. To send the calendar link or to not send the calendar link? Do you let them pick, like, hey, how does tomorrow at noon or Tuesday at 1 p.m. work? Or do you send the calendar link?
That's a great question. So it's really it depends, and it depends on your capacity or your sales rep's capacity. If there is a calendar that's not full, it means there's a bank account that's not full, and you're better off filling that bitch up and not worrying about, like, where your next call is going to come from. So in that case, keep control over the interaction and present to them an option close, essentially, of, I have this time or this time, which works best for you. That time, great. What's your email, your phone number? Awesome. And then have some sort of check-in process to make sure they show up. However, if you have a full calendar and we want to start dialing up the quality and dialing down the quantity, then you add in an extra stage of compliance, which is going to be picking their own time, and ideally, as a part of that, submitting an application.
Correct.
So you'll have better quality leads, but you'll also book less. And so it's a matter of understanding your own business's bottlenecks and being able to adapt as such.
Yeah, I love that. And I frankly say to a lot of our beginner agency clients that get on as many damn phone calls as you can right now. You can find opportunities to refer each other, meet other people through them. Just because that person's not going to be a client necessarily doesn't mean you shouldn't go spend 15 minutes at least with them to get in the industry, integrate yourself. So this is amazing so far. It's making perfect sense. By the way, I got people here, new people joining us. What's up, Dennis, Larry, and Eddie? A bunch of clients here. What's up, Scale 7 fam? Would love to know if you guys are enjoying this. Hit that thumbs up. I mean, how could you not be enjoying this? This is money. How do you make money on organic Messenger? Come on, guys. Let's do this. Hit the thumbs up. Grant's crushing right now. I would love, Grant, now we can move on to what I know you've been dying to talk about, the sales piece of this. So we've got them onto a phone call now. We are under the, not guise, but I guess the expectation and the context of let's like show them how to do something bigger. So how do you do that, give value while still maintaining a position of selling and being able to make an offer, right? I feel like a lot of clients get caught up in like, oh, I didn't know how to make the offer because they just thought it was a get to know you phone call, or I was giving them advice.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your take and your frameworks on this, and I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, this is great. I get this question a lot. In fact, it's when you have calls, it's likely that they fall into one of two categories. One, they applied to work with you. They know that it's a call in order to determine whether or not it's going to be a good fit. However, if you've presented the call, chances are you got that call booked because you framed it as some sort of strategy session. Now, if you just go into a standard scripted call process that's just straight up sales call, a lot of times you're going to run into a lot of resistance that you created because they're like, well, you promised me something that is incongruent with what's being delivered. And as soon as you break trust there, you have a much lower likelihood of being able to enroll someone. So, I mean, clarity of intent is huge, an alignment between your thoughts, words, and actions. If you say you're going to do something, do it, because as you build trust with someone, you can make bigger and bigger asks. There is such a thing as trust equity, right? So how do we conduct a strategy call that effectively becomes a sales call? It's funny because while there's a lot of great strategies and tactics, again, I take the fundamental like psychological approach of I'm going to create the same thing we did in Messenger. I'm going to close a small loop and open a bigger one. So to give an idea of how the call would go, it's typically like, hey, Brian, essentially, I want to give you a quick rundown for the purpose of our call today. As promised in Messenger, my intention is that I'm able to give you an actionable strategy that you could go forward with or without us. In order to do that, I do have to get to know your business a little bit better, and there's some things I'm still unclear about. So is it cool if I just start off by asking you a few questions? Great. So then I would go through a normal intel gathering process. In fact, I have 7 specific questions that must be answered in order to create the possibility of a sale. And I use the exact same framework, whether I'm selling a $6,000 offer or a $30,000 or a $60,000 offer. Those 7 questions, imperative. But now once we've gone through the intel gathering stage, and we're now at the point where you would typically want to transition to, all right, let's talk about what I can do for you. What we're going to do is, again, close a smaller loop. It's like, so based on what we talked about, I mean, a simple Band-Aid that would be able to get you through the next couple of weeks would essentially be doing these 2 things. But Brian, can I share with you what's going to happen if you execute on those things? So I'm going to get permission to give him feedback.
Yes.
So can I share with you what's going to happen in the next 12 months if this persists, or even if you do solve this small problem?
I love the permission. That's so key. And a lot of people miss that. When you get permission, it's more like you're prescribing them than pitching, right? People want to feel like there's a solution for them, not just this one size fits all t-shirt you're going to slide over their head while they're not looking.
Yeah, it's something I got from Jeremy Miner, who is absolutely a sales legend. And his cadence is much less, let me tell you what I can do for you, and way more, Brian, would it be appropriate if I shared with you what the best next steps would be for someone in your situation?
Yeah.
Because when you do that and they own it, it's a way different interaction.
And it feels like there's authority around it too, because there's certainty in your confidence of what they should do. And they're looking for you to be the expert to tell them, right? They don't want options. They don't want to be in a candy store. They want you to tell them.
100%. And in fact, it's the most frustrating thing for me as someone who does sales to be on the receiving end of someone who doesn't do a good job. It actually feels good. Like, people love to buy, but they hate the feeling of being sold to. So if you can give them the feeling of control, again, there's 3 things that someone needs to feel in order for them to buy and be happy about it. They need to feel free, smart, and in control. So on the topic of free, I'm not going to say, Brian, like, you have to do this, otherwise you're fucked. Smart, I'm not going to be like, well, obviously what you've been doing is pretty stupid because it hasn't worked yet, right? If I belittle you, there's no chance you're going to want to move forward. And if you do, it's going to be through resentment. And in control, I'm not going to say, so you have to do this next. Like, that's how it's going to be. It's going to be, so can you see yourself stepping into that possibility? There are people that have come before you, but you're different. So how can I count on you to be in full control of your results?
Yeah, and I
So
love putting the accountability back on them too, because a lot of people, especially in the coaching space, they expect it to be easy and not put any work in. But I love the partnership in coaching where we're going to show up, but you have to show up also. Whereas in done for you, the expectation's a little bit more skewed. But I just think having a healthy understanding of what your service is and what it does will help you be the compass for that.
100%, 100%. It has to be like, you have to shift responsibility to them. You can't be the savior, because there's this interesting cycle that you can get into where one energy attracts the opposite, right? And so if you are in hero energy constantly, well, what is the counterpart to a hero? It's a victim. And so naturally, if you stay in hero energy consistently,
Mhm.
you attract and you create victims around you. And at first, the victim feels rescued, saved. But as time progresses, no one likes to feel like a victim. No one likes to feel inferior. And so naturally, that actually then creates resentment. And so you're still just trying to do everything you can to take all the work off everyone else. And then you're still vilified because no one wants to stay a victim. So
That's interesting.
another,
A really interesting take. I've often said, um, I guess not the opposite, but maybe a version of this where you will attract the type of client that you are. So if you're someone who demands referrals or I'm sorry, refunds quickly, you're quick to judge, you're not respectful to the people that you pay money to, you're going to attract that. It'll be a mirror in your clients as well. So I think it's in a similar way like that. But like you said, if you're in superhero mode and you're always in your personal life trying to get involved and save other people, you'll attract that in your clients as well. So it's a two-way street there for sure. I love that
yeah.
take, man. Really great stuff, Grant. I really appreciate this. And I probably should have started with this, but now that we're in it, I'm just going to ask, where did you sort of learn sales? Was it just by doing it? Did you have a background in this? Where does your take on all of this come from?
It's a good question, man. I've always been entrepreneurial. In fact, I was just on a show on Monday and brought up an old story of the first thing that I ever sold. And that was a drawing that I had done in class of this cool car. And this, again, I mean, this is third grade. So it's this cool car. And my friend was sitting next to me. He goes, "Oh, I want that. Can I buy it from you?" I said, "How much?" He goes, $1. So instead of selling him the original, I took it right down to the school's library, ran it through the photocopy machine for a dime, and had a pretty good profit margin on that. Um, but anyway, I've always been entrepreneurial. I worked in supplement sales. I ran a couple supplement stores before building a fitness business. And then when I did, and I sucked at it, I got some great mentors that stretched my comfort zone like you wouldn't believe in terms of investment, but it was 100% worth it. So I got a chance to learn, from some incredible people. One of my favorite mentors has been and still is Ben Gower. But I've also been able to work one-to-one over the course of over a year with Eli Wild, who is Tony Robbins' top guy, and with Jeremy Miner, who is just an absolute legend. He made a couple $1 million a year as a W-2 sales employee, not in sales, but in commissions.
That's
So
insane.
I, I've been incredibly blessed to learn from some people that are absolute giants in my eyes. So
And
super
I think
grateful
that's a
for that.
lesson in and of itself. Like, don't try and make things up on your own. If you feel like you're struggling in sales, you're doing the right thing. You're investing time, being here, learning this type of thing. You should go follow Grant. He's tagged above here. He will share advice like he's saying he does all the time through his content. Will teach you how to be better at sales. Don't just make this up on your own, guys. Follow in the path of people who have done it before you.
Yeah. I
Cool,
mean,
man.
it's the number
So
one. It's the number one skill you have to have down in a business, because ultimately everything else is in support of making more sales. Your fulfillment to have happy clients, it's so that you can get great testimonials. They send referrals. They are happy so that you can then make more sales. Your marketing, it's to drive leads to make sales. Your finance, your financial management, so that you can reinvest in ad spend or other mentors. It's so you can make more sales. So if you're struggling in business, develop your sales process and lean on people who've already gotten it down. because it's the number one thing that'll make or break you.
And like you said, if you don't have a full calendar, you probably don't have a full bank account. That's one of my
Bingo.
favorite quotes. I got to put that on a fucking t-shirt. So I'm glad you brought this up, this idea of sales being the most important piece of your business. And by the way, I'm sorry if there's some background noise. It's the downfalls of being outside, I guess. Zoom does a pretty good job of blocking it out. But this idea where we have a lot of clients who come in and they want to hire out their prospecting and their sales like really early on. And I'm of the school of thought that you have to be the best damn salesperson in your company in the beginning, at least. If you try and outsource that too quickly and you can't show someone else the way, it's going to be very difficult for them to do it unless they're, a top tier performer like yourself. But frankly, to hire someone like yourself, beginners aren't going to be able to afford that, right? So there's that catch-22 where in the beginning stages of your business, before you can provide that support, and Bentley totally agrees, you need to be willing to do that shit on your own. That's at least our opinion. Where do you stand with that?
I mean, I would not change a thing about that. In fact, even once you have gotten your business to a point where to leverage your time effectively, it only makes sense to have a sales staff. You're not done selling. Now that you have a sales staff, your job is to continually be enrolling them in performing at the best of their abilities. You're still making sales there. So, and those sales will be a way bigger ROI than a one sale at a time on the phone. Because if you can cultivate a winner and they continue working well, that's the biggest investment. So little quick tips for someone that's thinking about hiring a sales rep. Don't do it until you have a good database of data. Wow, that sounded stupid. Database of data on your KPIs in regards to sales. So you need to be tracking measurably every day, over every week, over every month, every quarter and year, how many calls have been proposed, how many calls have booked, how many actually showed, how many offers were made, and how many did you actually close. And once you have consistent metrics that you can hit, then you can consider hiring someone else that will, at minimum, replicate those results, if not beat them. But if you don't have metrics upon which you can judge the performance of your reps, then there's no control in your business. And a lot of times a sales rep sounds amazing in the interview. They're doing a great job selling themselves. And then for some reason, they just fall off the face of the earth when they're in your organization. So you need great operating procedures and proven metrics that you could hit so you can actually judge whether or not it was a good investment.
Yeah, and typically good salespeople have an expectation of something that you're already going to provide to them to make their life easier. If someone comes in like, oh yeah, I can do it, and they're not asking for anything, it's probably a red flag. They don't know what they're doing. They're just making shit up. So if you want the higher quality salespeople, you're going to need to show them through having legitimate systems, having processes, having tracking, documentation, all the shit we teach inside of prospecting on demand in your business to make them have that confidence and set them up for success. So frankly, man, this is one of the most value-packed interviews I've done in a long time. I really appreciate it. To recap it, and then I'd love to maybe just any bigger other takeaways you want to share. Basically, creating organic content in other Facebook groups and on your own, and possibly in your own Facebook group to bring people to you. Open small loops and close them in Messenger to open a bigger one to lead to a sales call. On the sales call, if there's a good fit, ask for permission to make an offer and serve them. Pretty much covered it right there in a nutshell. Anything else you want to add or share? Anything, big takeaways, things people should know or in general that you think they should know about sales?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, so it's tough to distill everything down into a quick little
Yeah, and
bite-sized
I'm not
chunk.
in a rush. I just want to be respectful of your time. So if you want
I
to
appreciate it.
open that up, like we can talk about whatever you want, man.
So I did leave an open loop, and I want to call attention to that. When I discussed the 7 integral questions that must be answered in the context of an enrollment call, you can find that breakdown on granteilertson.com in the Learning Center. And I do recommend going through that because it's a resource you should have up on your screen whenever you're doing an enrollment call. And there's some supplemental learning materials attached that could be the one thing that changes everything for your sales game. So you can check that out on my site. It's totally free. Use it. provided you are someone with integrity and you're going to deliver on your promises, because it works. And I only want people that are great-hearted humans to be using it. But let's kind of like rapid fire, man, just back and forth. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned since you started in sales? And I'll kick it off with, selling is not telling. And there's no magic word that you can come up with that's going to touch, move, and inspire someone to take forward action. Selling is, in fact, strategic question asking geared towards helping somebody make their own empowered
Dude, I was
decision.
just writing that down. That was going to be my takeaway. You stole it. I was about to say, asking questions that help them come to their own conclusions. And you said it. You stole it.
That's why I like to start off. But I mean, at the end of the day, if I say it, you doubt it. It's just how our brains work. But if you say it, you own it. It's a personal fact. So I'm not going to tell you why I'm the right fit. I'm not going to tell you why you need to do this now. I'm going to ask you, so Brian, why is it important that you solve this problem now? Why not wait? Brian, what about our interaction thus far makes you believe I'd be a good fit to help you solve your problem? There's a lot of other mentors. Why do you think I'm the only one that would be able to take you to that next step? When you frame your question so that they get to make their own empowered decision, yet it pushes them down the path of a win-win, you got the magic sauce.
Love that, man. And I think one of my big takeaways is I'm going to go inside and avoid this noise. And you beach dogs will not be going inside right now. Is the idea that sales is a service. And so many people get caught up and so worried about trying to have to convince the other person on a sales call. If you are in a position where you're trying to convince someone, they're not going to enroll out of doing what's best for them, or they're going to enroll out of resentment, like you shared earlier, because you're forcing something on them. They don't have the balls to tell you no, or they're being too nice, or whatever the thing is. So when you're trying to pitch, you're already putting yourself in a disservice anyways. But I think that's what most people think sales is. I have to convince this person, where, just again, to piggyback on what you were saying, is it's really a matter of letting them come to their own conclusions. And I love how you framed it. Let them have their own idea. So it's their unique idea and not yours, by asking the intelligent questions around that. So I love that, man. That was my biggest takeaway on sales. And frankly, I thought I was pretty good at sales until I actually got around people who were good at sales. And I was like, oh shit, I am really, really bad. So I love just a quick fire question here. Like, what's one of the most common objections you get and how to overcome it? I would probably say, like, oh, it's too expensive, or, oh, I need to think about it. But I'd love your take on handling some of those common objections.
Well, so I have a different school of thought here, and an objection is really just something that was an unaddressed uncertainty earlier on in the call. So it's funny, when I tell you that I closed 5 deals yesterday, 4 of which were paid in full, didn't have any objections on the back end, because I pre-handled them using my 7 questions process.
Right.
And here's a phenomenal pro tip for anyone that is like, if you get this, it's going to make all the difference. So instead of going in and being like, all right, Brian, I'm going to tell you all the things that we do and how it could help you. Instead, I would phrase my lead in to a presentation like, well, based on everything we talked about, Brian, I'm pretty clear that we would be able to remove this pain and help you to accomplish pleasure, or help you get to paradise. And this is essentially just speaking out their pain and what they want.
Right.
I'm clear that we could do that. Would you like me to share with you how? Then once you've gotten permission, you phrase your presentation as, so you know how you said problem? Well, what we'll do is solution. And for you, that means benefit. And I'll do that for 3-4 of the tangible things in the service or the program or whatever. And that's it. Because the whole intention here is to keep ammo still down in your holster, not to just spill your guts on all the shiny shit that you think people should care about, but speak in their language. So it's like, Brian, you know how you said you've had a couple great months, but lately it's been completely across the board, and you haven't been able to even predict whether the month would bring in $2,000 or $20,000. Well, what we'll do is implement a proven marketing strategy that delivers high quality, high paying leads on a consistent basis. And what that means for you is cleared energy where you can focus just on making sales and supporting your clients,
Right.
and keep the headache of managing your your lead gen off the plate. Does that make sense? So again, I'm not talking about I'm going to run retargeting ads and I'm going to put together this, super special sequence, this, that, and the other that doesn't matter. I'm speaking to their pain, a very simple, easy to understand solution, because a confused prospect doesn't buy. Simple, and then illustrate the benefit. And once I've gone through those things, then I'll flip the script and say, okay, well, in a nutshell, that's essentially what we'd be able to do for you. Now, what questions do you have for me about the process specifically? So now I'm done presenting. I'm going to give him, it's what people call a tempo change. I'm going to give you the opportunity now to ask me the questions that you need to know. So instead of me spouting out a bunch of bullshit that may or may not land just based on my guess, you're going to ask me what's valuable for you to know, and then I'll answer your questions there. Make sure that there's any uncertainties ironed out, and then actually go into the pitch, because there's a difference between your presentation and your pitch. Pitch is where we're talking about pricing. And I don't want there to be any lingering uncertainties before I get into that. So it's like, any more questions for me? No, I think we covered it. Awesome. So I just want to check in with you based on everything we talked about. 1 to 10, does this feel like a perfect fit or like the exact opposite of what you're looking for? No, I mean, like 10, it's absolutely perfect. This sounds great.
Yep. Confirm value.
Yeah. Tie down. It's like, cool. So is there anything else that you could see that would stop you from moving forward today?
Price.
Price. Well, okay, we can get into that, but price aside, anything else? Tie down on the fact that it would only be price. Now we've mitigated majority of objections. And of course, it can get a little bit more complicated. You can't distill the whole like influence process down into a 40-minute video. But that said, if you can mitigate those on the front end, then your objection handling, easy as shit, because it's really just a lingering small uncertainty, which then I would actually handle with a process that's really similar to Jordan Belfort's looping. If you've ever read, what's the book, Way of the Wolf? Mm-hmm. One of my other sales trainers was Jordan's top guy at Stratton Oakmont. So he taught me this. And essentially the pattern is to just deflect the smokescreen objection. Totally hear you, Brian. Not a problem. Then reassociate or realign with what matters. So, I mean, does the product even make sense for you? I mean, do you like the idea, right? I'm just going to like get back in. Is it even something that you still like? Well, yeah, I do. So we reassociate, then we need to expand. So what exactly do you like about it? And then we'll take that and we'll make it bigger. In fact, it's even more than that. It's this, that, and the other, which means for you, you're going to be able to have this. And then you ask for the sale again. And so typically, if you just have a simple objection handling process like that, that doesn't grant validity to the objections that they're giving, and it doesn't address them head on, because that's what grants validity to their objections, you're going to be able to get down to the root. And if you've gotten price twice after going through that process, now we know it's actually a legitimate thing. Now we can start talking about payment plans or putting down a deposit. But unless you've gone through that process, chances are that's not the real thing. It's just a smokescreen.
People are not going to give you the real objection the first time normally.
No, it's a unicorn that does.
Yeah, and I like that you confirm the value of the offer separate from the investment price, right? And typically what we're having clients do, especially in the agency space, a little harder in the coaching space, but could still be doable, is getting them to confirm what a potential ROI could be for them as well. So, hey, I'm going to use Larry Hickman, one of our clients, as an example. He works in the water mold damage restoration business. And he knows that a water damage job is worth this much. Mold damage job is worth this much on average. He knows he can confidently get, say 30 leads a month. And so he conservatively says, hey, if I sent you 8 to 15 and you closed this percentage, are these numbers on point for you? You're closing about 30% of your calls. These are the average deals you're seeing. Great. So you're set to earn, if we were able to get you conservatively this, here's your ROI. Are we on the same page? Does that make sense? And confirming the ROI before you ever got to an investment price. So it's already anchored. So there's not a perfect silver bullet here in terms of selling guys, but you're seeing frameworks, right? There's these little
Mm-hmm.
frameworks you want to go through, and each one, you know, there's not always going to be a perfect formula for it. It's fine. You learn, you improve. And every single niche offer is going to be different. You need to feel it out and frankly, throw yourself into the fire and learn so you get the objections. Because I keep telling my clients, it's something, Grant, that I think people don't understand. Like they're getting frustrated when the calls don't go their way. But I'm like, no, the call is the necessary stepping stone to refine your skills. That's a gift to get better and overcome that challenge. Now, next time you get that objection, you'll be able to better handle it, right? There's no way you're going to get better at selling without failing at selling. So it's a necessary part of the process to do it. So get out there, throw yourself into the damn fire. And if you haven't yet, go watch Alex and I do cold calls. It was kind of warmish last night. We crushed it. We booked like 8 calls in an hour. If you're not picking up the damn phone, go do some shit, guys. Like take action. So I'm super grateful for your time, Grant, because you shared more value than any. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. What I've done, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. Now, sorry, anyone I've done an interview with recently. I'm just kidding. They've been great. This has been good though, because I think it's very tactical and tangible of what the actions they are could do. A lot of times we talk in like hypothetical, like the what and the why, but I love how we really got into the how on this call. So I appreciate that, brother. Anything you want to part with, and I included a link to your website and your learning center. You're tagged above. Anywhere else you want to send people or want them to know about you before we head off?
Yeah, cool. I mean, if you feel called, feel free to send me a friend request. I still have a little bit of space because I cleared it out recently. For sales tips, go to granteilertson.com. Once you've started making good money, huge gap, most people don't know what the fuck to do with it in order to keep it out of Uncle Sam's pocket and start using it to work for you. So I actually run another group specifically on finance called Financial Finessing for Financial Freedom, Money Tips, Tools, and Talks. And I bring in some of the industry experts and leaders that are discussing creative financial management strategies so you can get out of this constant like hero to zero cycle that I found myself in for the past few years.
Do you know who Adam Rundle is by chance?
Yeah, I like Adam.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. He's been our pseudo CFO sort of, and has some helpful insights around money that I think he does a great job of simplifying as well. So I'll connect you guys. It sounds like you know him, but anyways, we get to talk about that offline. Just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have my own CFO as well. And then some of the just absolute badasses that I've learned from everything from travel hacking to be able to travel the world for free to actually protecting, preserving, and compounding your wealth in a way that you can actually utilize $1 in 2 places at a time. It's crazy shit. But that said, if you feel called, the group is linked on my profile as well. Nothing to sell you here today, just happy to come in and share some of the wisdom. When you do make sales with what you learned here, let me know. It's super fun for me to hear that.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, you know where the links are. Go find him, go reach out. Go use his resources. If you're just catching us now, watch the replay. It was super valuable. Grant, I appreciate you, man. Everyone else, we will talk soon. See y'all, 7 Figure Culture. Peace.
Thank you, brother.